Right, so here we have the data model for the widgets. We're going to make a couple of changes here in the fields. Before we had used strings as our primary keys, data type. Instead, we're going to modify this to be integers. Right? You could use the lowercase, primitive data type int, or you can use the integer class. Right? Either one, it's fine. Right? As long as you are consistent everywhere. Okay. So I'm going to use the class integer. Now, because I did this, I probably broke a whole bunch of things, right? That were expecting my widget to be ID to be a string. So let's fix those. Notice that the setters and getters here, they're expecting strings. So I'll change that to integers, and I'll change this to integer as well. This is also supposed to be an integer. There we go. All right, so we're done with that. Probably the service is also expecting these to be integers. Now notice that we're using this for creating these static values for the widgets. Since we're not going to be using that anymore, I'm just going to blow this array. Right? There's no point in fixing that. Right? We're going to blow that away. Also notice since we blow away that array, we kind of we need to refactor this a little bit. For create widgets, I'm just going to blow that away. I'm not going to use that array anymore. I'm just for now, so this compiles, I'm just going to return just null out of this. Okay, I don't need this list anymore. So I'm just removing all that. List of widgets. I'm also probably going to have an empty array and just remove that. And widget list, I'm just going to return null. Okay. All right, we have that. Let's see the controller. Did we break anything in the controller? Let's see. We have something down below here. Okay, get widget was instantiating this. Again, this was a test just to play around with the controller. I'm not going to use that, so I'm just going to throw away these two. I think that's it. Let's restart the server, see if anything still blows up. Okay, compiled fine, right? And the user interface, if I retrieve the widgets, I probably just won't get anything. It's null, right? I'm returning just null. All right. Again, we're in the process of migrating this. All right, let's go back, and let's go back now that we have changed the widget to be an integer. We can now decide that we want to come up with a automatic definition of what these IDs might be, right? Instead of us having to create it, right? Instead, we're going to delegate the database to do that for us, right? So to do that, in MySQL, typically you use what is called auto increment. Since it's an integer, it'll auto generate every time we go forward. If it's Oracle, we use sequences, right? And you can turn that on and off from code, right? Instead of touching SQL. So you can do we're going to configure this with another annotation and say that this particular field is auto-generated by the database. And there's several strategies that you can use to auto-generate that. We're going to use the identity strategy. The identity strategy is implemented in MySQL as an auto-increment. It's implemented in SQL Server as an identity, which is also like an auto-increment. Right? So different databases will implement it differently. Right? But in MySQL, it uses auto-increment. So let's save that. Let's save that, and let's restart the server. Now, if we restart the server, it'll try to modify the old table. Sometimes it fails. It says I cannot modify the table. You know, the new table is so different from the previous table, right, that I cannot alter it, right? So if we go back, we'll probably see that it failed to do this. So if we refresh widgets to check to see if it worked, we can look at the SQL that was used to generate this. We can right-click on and send to the SQL editor the create statement. Notice that it's still varchar, so it didn't work. Right? It did not regenerate the new table with the auto increment. So let's blow away the table. I'm just going to blow away. I'm going to do a drop table immediately. Drop the table right now. Obviously, if this were a database that was already in production, you would not have the opportunity to drop anything, right? You would have to alter it by hand, right? Or some DBA would have to do it for you. But here we own the entire stack. We're free to do whatever we want, right? So I'm going to restart the server. It's going to check to see if the table already exists. If it doesn't exist, it will recreate it for us. There it is. It did create it. Notice that indeed it added an auto increment, and now it's an integer. See that? We can check that in the database and refresh and see that we got back our widgets table. I'm going to send the create again to the to SQL editor just to show you the difference. Notice that it used to be a varchar, now it's an integer, right? And it's auto increment. Make sense? Every time we insert, right, it'll just increase that ID for us automatically. Make sense? All right.